Hello, this is Brian Hale, and it's once again time for an archived edition of Howard Hale's Horseman's Corner. It once appeared on the radio in 2021. This is an interview with a breeder that is well known, and his horses live on through many breeding programs. Here's the late Howard Hale with Sam Shoultz in the 2021 interview.
I'm Howard Hale, and thanks for joining me for today's Horseman's Corner. Let's get right into today's program with the first guest. With us on the program today, Sam Shoultz. Kisa quarter horses is what he has had for several years. And gosh, I thought you dispersed your horses, but it turns out you still got a few left. What's going on?
Yeah, I mostly dispersed my broodmare band in 2018. I did keep 3 mares, and I still have a 7-year-old stallion I raised, and I still own Mr. Junewood, but I did sell Blue Fox Hancock. So I'm cut significantly down, but I'm still hanging around. I can't take my feet out of the water, I guess.
Well, you've had a big influence on quite a few horse breeders in reality through your breeding program that you had for years. How many years did you really go hot and heavy at breeding quarter horses?
Well, if you count through today, I actively produce a lot of foals for over 30 years, but I did raise a few before that too. So I guess this depends when you want to start. But the bulk of the horses I raised was over the last 31 years.
What was the foundation of the breeding that you used? What were you doing?
I was trying to use and utilize the old bloodlines, primarily of Blue Valentine and Driftwood, with a little bit of Leo thrown in, and I did have a few mares that had some Poco blood too. But I believed in those, and I wanted to prove that they could still be competitive in today's marketplace. A lot of people think that if you don't have one of the 3 or 4 or 5 popular bloodlines, they're not going to do much good. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say, okay, I've got these. I believe in them. They're good working horses. They're solid. They're stable. They have good minds. They have good conformation. Let's just see what they can do. And to do that, I put them in the hands of some professional riders, trainers that showed in the open classes and AQHA, mostly in the roping events, but actually I had some horses that were shown in several other events as well. And I thought, if they prove they can do it, I'm just going to keep refining it. And if they don't say they can do it, be competitive, that is, I'll make a few changes till they are. Well, fortunately, they proved they were competitive. So I just refined my breeding program, going back and forth on several lines of Driftwood and several lines of Blue Valentine, until I was producing a horse that had a lot of speed, a lot of energy, a lot of cow sense, and yet they weren't hot. And that's the kind of horse it seems like most people get along with the best. But the professional riders would say they've got enough quick foot that they do well in the show pen. So I'm kind of trying to produce an all-around, go work on the ranch, go trail ride, or go put them in the show pen, and they'll equally be at home at any of the events.
And these horses tended to have pretty doggone good foot and bone on them, didn't they?
Yes, that's one thing that both sides of this particular lines of pedigrees don't have some of the conformational issues that some lines of horses have. And they also don't have the attitudes that some lines of horses have. And to me, I've always said, you sit on their back, but you ride the mind. And if you don't have a good mind, it's pretty hard to get the horse to work to potential. If you've got a good mind, they'll go to work even maybe past what you think their potential is. So that was kind of my guide on life that I was always chasing that.
What attracted you to those Blue Valentines and the Driftwoods?
Back when I was in college, that was many decades ago, my roommate had a horse that was Hancock bred, that he could do just about anything. That horse's name was Kid Handy, and so that was my introduction to the Hancock lines. And the Driftwood lines I'd known about for a long time. I'd never dealt with them, but I did get my hands on some and really liked them. So that was my program, the pronged approach of using sons and daughters on sons and daughters of the other lines, and also had enough stallions of both sides of both degrees. I used to run between 8 and 10 stallions in the broodmare bands. That I could cross them back and forth and kind of refine what I thought was working the best for me. And that's kind of how it all started with my old-time college. I worked on his dad's ranch for several years when I was in college, and so I was pretty well immersed.
You tossed a little Leo in there, you said, as well. Why did you stick a little Leo in there?
I always thought Leo was a really good broodmare sire. And it seems like if you looked at the tail lines of a lot of pedigrees, you'd see some Leo in it. And so, he put not only some cow sense, but he put some speed in it. And so, thing to have for various reasons, it almost always showed up on the maternal line in the horses I bred. But I think he had a good influence.
What about the driftwoods? We've talked quite a bit. Person's talked quite a bit about some of the Hancocks, the Blue Valentines, and some of those lines. What about the driftwoods? What do they bring to the table?
The driftwoods are a little more smooth muscle. They're a little more athletic, I guess you could say. A little more, probably a little more energy. They smooth. Excuse me. The Hancocks put a solid conformation on. The driftwoods add a little smoothness and a little more ease of motion. If you watched all the babies running around in the pasture, which I did every year, it was pretty easy to follow the way the babies made their when they ran by, their motions, the movements, which ones carried most of which line. So I always thought that driftwoods smoothed out the Hancocks a little bit, and the Hancocks added a little more bulk to the driftwoods. So to me, it was a good combination, and that goes way back to the tie-ins on both the Blue Valentines and driftwoods. In the backgrounds of their pedigrees, you'll find some common horses. And, of course, the old-time horse breeders said that if you could tie in the back ends of the pedigrees, you had a better chance to produce what you're looking for. So I kind of followed the expertise and knowledge of some of the old-time breeders.
There's some breeders that are still carrying on what you worked on quite a bit, aren't they?
Oh, yes. I'm fortunate that I've got some people that are very definitely carrying on, and that's J.D. Lowing at the Lowing Ranch and Daniel at Sunrise Farms, and they've both infused their programs with a lot of my horses, and then the Hendersons in Utah have used a lot of my horses. So there's been a lot of people that I guess it made me very humble. They said to me, "You gave us the backbone of our program," and that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, it would, and it's really interesting that you went ahead and put some of those Blue Valentines and the driftwoods in the show ring, because that hasn't been done a whole lot in the show world, has it?
No, actually, we did get a little bit of how do you want to say it, resistance to the idea that those horses were going to be competitive, and that remained until they started beating their horses, and then they paid a little more attention. So it's not just the rider, it's not just the horse. You have to have a good horse with the ability, and you have to have a good rider that's a good showman. And a good showman can show a poor horse better, but a good horse will make a poorer showman look better. And so the magic of the formula is to have a good horse that has all the ability, and a person to ride him that has good showmanship ability. And so we did spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort to put these horses out and prove them. It's pretty easy to say, I've got the best whatever, and say, what have you done with it? Well, we trail ride, or we work some cattle. But you really don't know how they stack up against the rest of the horses. So my way of thinking, the only way you know what you got is to put them out, ride them, and prove them.
Stay with us, folks. Going to be back with more from Sam Shoultz in just a moment. You're listening to the Horseman's Corner.
Do you need help with anything website related? Hale Multimedia has been in the business of helping others for over 20 years. Please give us a call at 940-224-6315 or visit halemultimedia.com. Anything website related, we're here to help you. That's halemultimedia.com.
Good to have you back with us here on the Horseman's Corner. I'm Howard Hale, host of the program, and let's get some more information from Sam Shoultz about the philosophy that he has about breeding, what he was trying to accomplish while he was breeding horses. So let's get right into that. What's the size on these blue Valentines and Driftwoods that you bred? What size were you shooting for? What do you think is a good size for the horse world today?
Well, we produced horses that pretty well stayed about the 15 hand mark. That means there was a few that were a little over and a few that were a little under. But that seems to be a really handy size. They've got enough ability to make movements, and yet they've got enough size and bulk to handle cattle. I wouldn't argue with people that say they want a little shorter horse. I wouldn't argue with people who want a little bigger horse. Typically, just like in people, the most agile people are a little bit shorter than the big, tall people. They're typically not as agile. But just kind of pay attention to that, too. And if you ride in the middle of the road, you'll get agility and ability.
Yeah, and that's interesting because that you took some of those horses into the show world. Now, they've been involved in the rodeo world for a long time, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. The Driftwoods in particular have been well received, noted, and have won many awards and accolades in all phases of the rodeo world. Driftwood himself was a multi-event horse. They match raced him. They did all the roping on him. They barrel raced on him. In other words, he was an all-around kind of a horse. And I think that's what we've lost a little bit. We've kind of been breeding towards more single-event kind of horses, and I still wanted to keep the old all-event kind of mind. And the Hancocks as well known mostly in the roping event. But everybody forgets that Joe Hancock won most all of his races, and Driftwood won a lot of his races. So you got speed on both sides of the pedigrees.
Yeah, and in today's horse world, with so many trail riders out there, that calm mind is really an important issue, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There's a gentleman that's bought a number of my horses. He ranches in New Mexico, and his main roping horse now is a Blue Fox Hancock son, and that's what he says. He said, I can go rope on that horse. I asked him to do whatever he needs. He's got the speed, he's got the energy, and I can put my granddaughter on him, and he just walks around. He said, I love that mind. And he's probably, they have to count it up, he's probably got a dozen or so of my horses.
Hey, let's talk about how you handled the studs, because gosh, you'd wind up putting some of those horses together over the winter, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. They can learn to have manners, and they can learn to be rank. And some people are just absolutely determined that you can't put them together, and they don't want them to have a scratch, and they don't want this, and they don't want that. And I have no argument with that. But my studs all went out to pasture, and so they knew how to work in a herd of horses. And I think particularly the younger studs learned a lot. When they went into a pen with some older studs, they found out they weren't quite the king of the hill they thought they were. And I think it did a lot to keep their minds a little more straight. So, yeah, I thought that was an important part. Now, do I think that's for everybody? Probably not. But I would still do it if I was still running a bunch of studs.
Yeah, those you can keep that stud horse pretty doggone quiet if you pay attention to what you're doing, can't you?
Absolutely. You know, I tell people, this is kind of a funny analogy, but it works. I tell people, if somebody locked you up in your bathroom for 23 hours a day and let you out for an hour, you'd probably be a little stir crazy. And that's what some of these people do with their stud horses. They keep them locked in a stall, and sometimes they're lucky if they get out for an hour a day.
I had one guy that I knew that always had good luck with studs, getting them to work. And he said, I treat them like they're gilding as far as that's concerned. He said, I keep them occupied, give them some work to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's a mistake to kind of pick on them all the time. You don't want them. You don't want them to be afraid of you. You don't want them to be resentful. You just treat them like you've got a job to do. Let's go do the job.
Where are you going with your horses from here, Sam?
I really like this young stallion I kept back. He's a Driftwood Sensation son on top of a Plenty Try, which was Blue Valentine's daughter, that also had some of the other more modern bloodlines in him, like San Barbar. And he's a really nice colt. We used him all over on our ranch. He's been to a lot of clinics. He's been to a lot of everyday work, everything to do on a ranch. And I kept him back because I had three of his full sisters in the broodmare band, and they always had outstanding babies. And I've bred him to a few mares. His first foals were on the ground this year, and I really liked the looks of them. And so he bred a few more mares this year for next year's foals. Don't really promote him a lot that way. I'm sure pleased with what he's doing. He's breeding just like I thought he would. So he's going to be my do anything I want to do on horse. He's been ridden a lot. He's broke to death. Got a good mind and a very good conformation. And I'll probably try to breed Mr. Pritzwood's mom, which is one of the mares I kept, and try and get another foal or two like those were. And just I want to keep the nucleus working as much as I can without having the numbers. And as you know, numbers can add up pretty quick, so I'm being kind of aware of that.
Yeah, they do. I can tell you that numbers add up pretty quick. What you're still doing quite a bit of work with folks like the Lowings and Sunrise Farm?
Oh yes, absolutely. And the Hendersons in Nevada have had a lot of success with my horses. One of my horses that he bought was world champion in the action shooting, and they ranch and they use them all the time, and so that's the kind of people that are saying bloodlines still work.
Yeah, and unfortunately the Hendersons, I think, lost the stud that they got from you and had had for several years.
Yeah, that's true. It was. I was sorry to hear that. He was a nice horse, and they'd won a lot with him, but they've got some other nice horses, so I'm sure they'll keep on going. That's a consortium of the Lowings and Sunrise Farm and Hendersons, and there's 2 or 3 others in it, and their bloodlines are all peaked toward this kind of horse that we're talking about.
And where do you see? Gosh, Lowings looks like they have a pretty doggone good program up in South Dakota.
Yes, they do. They've done it a long time. And fortunately, they've bought horses from me for a number of years, and I guess they like them because they continued to buy them. And so, yes, they have tried really hard to kind of produce the same things that we've been talking about. I don't think they spend as much time to show them, but they do produce them and use them. And he's got a pretty good eye for looking at what he's producing, and Daniel's got the same kind of philosophy. So I feel like the lines are in good hands. The
young stallion that you have, you're going to take him out. You got to show him some.
When he was I believe he was a 2-year-old, I had 2 other horses with Luke being shown, and I sent him up there just to be ridden a little bit. And I thought, to be just as straightforward as you can be, it costs a lot of money to keep that many horses on the show ring. So I brought him home. One of which was Blue Fox, and one of which was his brother Red Fox, and then I finally brought Red Fox back home, and Lowry's ended up buying him later, and now they have Blue Fox as well. So I don't know that I'm going to pursue the show ring a lot. Luke Jones has shown a lot of my horses, and he has a full sister to Mr. Fritzwood currently that we're kind of judging how she's going to be. I think she's got the genetics to do it. We'll see if she's got the mind to do it. And so, yeah, I enjoy kind of keeping them up. And Luke's sons are riding a bunch of my horses, and so the people are aware of what they are.
Well, Sam, this it was a lot of fun for you, I would assume, when you were really heavy in the business, but sounds like you're still having a good time with the horses.
Oh, I am. I do, and I do miss the breeding portion of it. I love seeing the babies that came out every year, the crosses. I did enjoy that a lot. I like the genetics. Always have enjoyed that. And I just very, very much enjoyed going out in the different bands and observing the babies and the mares and the movements and the attitudes and you know, that to me was a very relaxing, enjoyable thing. But everything has got a time frame, so I enjoy it now. I just don't have as much to enjoy.
If people want to get in touch with you and talk to you about your horses, how can they do it? What are some places where they can get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of us on the website, pieceofquarterhorses.com, and also they can get a hold of me, and my phone number is 970-215-9433.
And I'm glad to see that you survived all of the COVID scare so far.
Oh, yes. I don't run around in crowds very much, and I'm not afraid, but I think it's probably wise to be a bit cautious. So I don't really have any inclination to want to get that virus.
Well, Sam, it's really been good talking to you again, and I'm glad you're still involved with the horses because you've contributed a lot to, I think, to the horse industry over the last several years.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I did it for several decades, and I guess it's like anything else. You have to study it, and you have to pay attention, and you have to try and better things every year. Don't just produce the same thing over and over. Try and make a little better thing every year.
Sam Shoultz, keeps a quarter horses, still raising a few head, but really a big-time breeder of quarter horses for over 30 years. Interesting to get some of his thoughts about why he was raising what he was raising.
And with that, that's going to close out our program for today. We appreciate you listening to The Horseman's Corner with the late Howard Hale, and the guest on this program was legendary breeder Sam Shoultz. Special thanks to our sponsor, Hale Multimedia, website design, broadcasting, and podcasting. That's going to do it for today's program. Thanks again for listening, and may God bless. I'm Brian Hale.